Hey everyone, Brad the mechanic here. Today we're working on a 2014 Ford Escape. This is a titanium. It is just front wheel drive, but it's pretty much going to be the same on all of them. Going to do the wheel bearing today. So we got the wheel off, got the car in a jack stand, and we're going to start off by, what I like to do is I like to take the tie rod end off first, pop that off, and then we can move this around, get the caliper off. And what I'll do is I'll just take the caliper bracket and caliper off at the same time. Makes it a little bit easier. Then we'll get this axle nut off. Then we'll come back here. We're going to take this knuckle bolt off. It's holding it to the strut. And then I'm going to lube this up a little bit, because once we get this bolt off, we're going to be pushing this downwards to get the knuckle off of the strut itself. You can unplug this, push down here, and remove this plug, which is the wheel speed sensor. You can remove it from here and here and get it out of the way. I like to do that right after the tie rod end or before that, just that way this doesn't get messed up. So once you get this off, you're going to hit it with a hammer right here. We're going to shock it. Alright, so what that's going to do is once we hit it here, it's going to let this come out. Instead of hitting this here or using a pickle fork or any other tool to get this off, because a lot of times you can mess up this boot, because we're not replacing the tie rods. So I'm going to smack it right here a few times with a hammer, and this is going to release that from inside there. As you can see, with a few swings of the hammer, hitting it right here, the tie rod just fell right out. Before removing the caliper, I'm going to take this 8mm brake hose fastener off to give me a little bit more room to take the caliper, and I'm going to set it. I take the wheel and I set it down here, and I'll set the caliper on it so that it's not extending and putting too much pressure on this brake hose. Next, to take the caliper bolts off, the caliper bracket bolts off. It's an 18mm. We're going to remove those, and then we're going to take a screwdriver. I'm going to go in right here. I'm going to pull it this way. And what that's going to do, that's going to push this piston in for the brake caliper, and that is going to make it a lot easier for us to take this off of here and set it off of the vehicle. See, that's pushing that piston back a little ways, and it should make it a lot easier to pull this off. Now I've got the caliper off, the rotor. Sometimes you got to bang on them a little bit. If you do, hit them right here, and try not to hit the studs, and they should come off. So now we're going to be back here. I'm going to zip this off. I use a 1.25 inch, which I'm sure is a metric one that fits better, but this actually feels like it feels nice and tight. It's a 6-point. So I'm going to zip this off, and then this is a 15 up here. I'm going to lube this before I do it, and I'm going to lube up here, and then we'll get this off. Boom! So sometimes these take a little bit of banging to get out. You're gonna want to use some type of punch or something so that you're not messing up the threads on here. So we got lucky there, but yeah, see, now it's sliding through. I should have probably put a little lube in there before doing this, but I've worked on this one previously, so I know that was going to come out pretty decent. But I've had a lot of problems with these Fords, even this 2014, where I had to torch the living crap out of it in here to get this out. So just so you know, on some of these northern cars, because this is in Michigan, If you live in the Rust Belt or something like that, these are going to be seized in there pretty decently. So now that I got that free, it's going to make it a little easier to do the rest of what I need to do. So I'm going to start by lubing this and getting this nut out. This bolt. So now that we got that knuckle bolt out, we are going to come down here to the ball joint. Now this bolt is also a 15, but there's a nut on the other side, so you're going to have to hold it while you zip this off. So after further inspection, it's an 18 millimeter on that side. And a 15 over here. So I have my 15 on there and my 18 on a brake bar, so I can just zip it off. Boom! Shakalaka. So we are going to be taking the whole knuckle off and pressing this bearing out. So these 3 10mm bolts have to come out. And this is the dust shield for this car. Well, last time I took this off, it broke, and if you can see right there, I had to take the piece that broke off and turn it just to hold it on. So I'm probably going to end up tack welding these because it looks like one of them is going to break again. This one's actually broken too, so I'm going to probably have to tack weld these, but that's just something you guys are going to have to look for when you guys do these cars. And once you remove the dust shield, you can see the wheel speed sensor in here. So I like to lube it up a little bit, and it is a T25 Torx to get that off. Once you get that off, you're going to have to move this back and forth just a little bit. Yeah, and then once it starts moving like that, you can remove it. Just try to spin it little by little, and eventually it'll pop out. Alright, so I used a pry bar, and while pushing down, I hit it with a hammer a few times on the control arm. Got this to pop out. Once that's out, we'll be able to pull this CV shaft out of the way and then get this knocked down. Now, as you can see, the CV shaft is over here, the ball joint's right there, and this knuckle is free to move downward. So I'm going to start hitting it with a hammer right here. If it doesn't, well, actually you should probably try to wedge something back here and open this up a little bit. Sometimes I'll use a punch, a flat punch, and just go in there and separate it a little bit, and then it should make it just practically drop off. Make note, see this little tab sticking out? There's a slot in here. It's hard for me to get to, see? But yeah, see? So you're gonna have to make sure when you're putting it back on that that lines up and that goes back in there, because that'll screw your day up if you don't get it on there right. So you just have to move it down about 8 feet there practically, and then just keep tapping on it, because if it's not moving really easily, you got to move it, open that up a little bit more in the back, because you don't want to smash the hell out of this thing. So I'm about to pull it off here, and we'll take a look at the bearing. So I got it off here, and usually you can tell by the sound in the car when you're driving, but this one was really bad, and yeah. That's not good. So we are going to, we're going to make sure, yeah, it's bad. I mean, I could tell as soon as I took the car 5 feet down the road, I was like, yeah, it's bad. So now we're off to get it pressed. I have other videos of me pressing in and out bearings. If you want to check them out, they're on my channel. But we're going to take this out, this snap ring here, and then we are going to, you're then going to push this piece out downwards, and it's going to push this spindle off. Now, you can get a new spindle, or you reuse this one, but if you do reuse it, there's a piece of the inner race. So, sorry, this piece right here on the other side, this is a 2-piece bearing here, and it's going to stick onto the spindle on the other side. So what I'll do is I'll use a grinding wheel or a cutoff wheel and cut a slit in it, and then as soon as I get the slit all the way through, it comes right off. And in order to get this outer race off, because it stays with the spindle. If you're going to reuse the spindle, I'd make a cut right here, and then I can eventually just pop it right off. Then you're going to press the bearing out this way. And when the bearing comes out, you're going to clean it up. You're going to put the bearing in first this way, the way that you took it out. And then when you're going to put this, when you're going to press this piece on, this spindle, you're going to have to put, have something hold right here, because what'll happen is when you're pushing the spindle in, it'll push this inner race of the bearing out. So you got to make sure that this is done just right, unless it'll mess it up. So you get the bearing in, you're going to take this bad boy, and what I'll do is I'll punch right here and get this spread open a little bit more, and just have the chisel or whatever you put in there, just set it in there for a few minutes, and then when you go to put it on, it makes it a lot easier. So also lubing this is going to make it a lot easier. So make sure that this is lining up with this, okay? Because what you can do is when you're putting this on, and you're trying to get it on there, and you're like, oh crap, it's not aligned, I just give it a few taps with the hammer on this side or this side, whatever way it needs to move, and it'll eventually line right up with here. So then you'll throw that on and make sure when you put everything back together, I like to clean out all these orifices that, like for the wheel speed sensor and this area and stuff like that. So make sure you do that when you put it all back together, especially clean this and get all the rust off of there and the corrosion, because this can be a problem in the future. Because I had one where I had to cut this much off of it because it got so messed up from trying to get it out. So with these, this is a nylon lock nut, but usually if you press this up in here hard enough, so sometimes these don't want to spin on and it'll just spin this shaft and you can't tighten this nut. If that happens to you, take your jack it up and put pressure on that while it's inside there, and then zip the nut on and it'll go right on. So I'm pretty sure everything else is self-explanatory, because you just got to do what I just did but backwards. So thank you for watching. You don't have to like or subscribe, I just want you to fix your shit, so go out there and fix it. Alright, see ya.